Welcome to the Mind Chimp podcast. Hey Paul, welcome to the Mind Chimp podcast. How are we doing?
Hey Danny, I'm doing great. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I guess Paul, before we jump into it, I tend to ask my guests to pick 6 numbers. So if you could pick 6 numbers from 1 to 100 for me, that'd be great.
3.
Yep.
99.
Okay.
100.
Yep.
2.
Okay.
1.
Yep.
And 50.
And 50. Perfect. We will come back to them later on down the line. So Paul, I guess what I tend to ask my guests kind of if they was to sum themselves up as a tagline or a movie log line, what would that be? So I guess, Paul, if for people who don't know you just yet, rather than getting into kind of who you are, but if you had to summarise yourself in a sentence, what would that be?
Let's say always challenging the status quo.
Okay, I like that. So when you was younger and you was in school, and the teacher would come up to you and say, Paul, what is it you want to be when you grow up? What would it be, what you would say back to that teacher?
I actually wanted to be a scientist to explore and research nature. As a child, I grew up at the countryside, and I was always playing with animals, critters, trees, and so on. So I really wanted to go in the field of researching and exploring nature.
Okay, interesting. So going back to your tagline and kind of always challenging the status quo, explain that a little bit for me. What do you mean by that?
Well, that's kind of how I operate on a daily basis. I'm always questioning. Questioning is kind of my default. So whether I'm in a project or whether I'm doing a design or at school or university, I'm always questioning why things are being done in a specific order. I'm also questioning myself quite a lot and my own designs. So I guess it all boils down to having a mindset of always questioning.
Okay. Yeah, my favourite question personally is why. That's just like my constant go-to. Why are we doing it this way? Why is it that way? And I think with challenging the status quo, I think when we get older, the more older we get, sometimes we can lose that. We can kind of lose that curiosity and that being brave to ask that question, why are we doing this, and kind of, is there a better way we can do that?
And I think also, especially in this day and age, I think just by walking down the street or being in an airport or being in a public place, you can see it clearly with that people are not, I'd say, are not experiencing well-being. Also talking with Uber drivers, or also looking at research. We have created, or we find ourselves in a system that has to be questioned, definitely, just because I think people live in a not so good psychological state. So I think now is the time to question the system, and not, I would say, not only the well-being of humans, but the well-being of our planet and the natural world.
Okay, I like that.
I think now it's the time to ask questions.
Definitely,
more than ever.
Definitely. So I guess, Paul, from the listeners, I know who you are, and kind of we've engaged on LinkedIn and stuff. But I guess, from our listeners who don't know who you are, Paul, maybe if we could do a bit of a brief whistle-stop tour on kind of where you've been, in your career, and kind of where you've been and where you are now.
So, let me start from the beginning. I have been studying innovation in tourism That's my latest school that I graduated in Salzburg. I have a master's in that. And then at university, I really got fascinated by the topic of experience design. Um, I know, Danny, you shared a bit that you have a background in designing for learning experiences and education. And I came at it from a different perspective, basically from tourism. If we think about tourism, they're tourist providers or producers or designers, however you want to call them. They are actually designing experiences. And like you shared with me before the interview, they're not aware that they're doing that. They're not aware that they're experience designers. But doing a master's in that, we put the experience design lens on tourism, and I got to learn a lot from tourism point of view about experience design. And then I also got into the topic of game design. Game designers are experience designers. And I focused at the intersection between tourism and games, and went really deep on that path of research. Wrote my master thesis, and based on my master thesis, I wrote a book. So it took 1.5 years more, together with my mentor and professor from the university, Roman Egger. And after finished this book called Gamification in Tourism: Designing Memorable Experiences, I started doing lots of public talks, keynotes at various conferences. And then I also got into consulting on the topic of experience design. And I think 4 years ago, I met Klaus Rasted. We're both speakers at the same conference. And then I saw what he was doing, and really got fascinated by the world of live action role play, which is this creating, so being immersed in alternate realities by using role playing. So then we became partners, and we have collaborated and created, produced lots of experiences around the globe, among most notably the College of Extraordinary Experiences, which is an experience design event, so to call it, right? That focuses on giving people the experience of learning about experience design without having to listen to a talk or something like that. Just by being immersed in an experience, you get to learn. It also focuses on building a community. So I moved from, let's say, from student to writer, author to consultant to producer, to now a person that uses lots of different hats on a daily basis. So it's quite hard to say what I'm doing right now, because it's changing every day very fast. So from mentoring to running an organization to designing to talking, also engaging with students. So quite a lot of many things.
Okay. No, thank you very much for explaining that. I guess there's a couple of things which I want to kind of pull out there. I guess the gamification in tourism, the book. So, what I'm always intrigued to understand why people write books, and usually it's because either to share kind of information, advice, kind of structure stuff. But what was one of your biggest drivers to create that book?
I got fascinated by a book written by Pine and Gilmore called The Experience Economy. Are you familiar with it?
Yep.
So some of your listeners might be familiar with it. And I really, for those that are not, it just talks about how we moved from an agrarian-based society to an industrial society to a service-based society or economy, to now an experience economy, and then moving in the future towards a transformation economy. And I really got fascinated by the fact that we we're living in, or we're just about to transition from services to experiences. So that topic fascinated me, but I was also frustrated at the same time, because on one hand side, we had these brilliant professors at the university talking about the experience economy and how to design experiences, looking at different examples. But then when I looked at my experience as a student, I realized that there was no one at the university that used the same know-how to focus on my student experience. Use the same tools, use the same mindset on how to accelerate my learning, how to create bonding, how can I experience exponential growth, how can I feel safe, how can I be engaged, and so on. I just realized that it's just the default standard system of university, and I got really frustrated. I said, why is no one using this know-how to revolutionize or to change the experience of being a student? And so I guess the first step that I did was to create a student organization that focused on taking the know-how from our lectures and applying it in the university setting. So we created events, socializing events by using the lens of experience design. And then just by doing that, I got more and more into the topic, because I really liked the effects that using an experience design had. And then I also looked at games, because I think they have a lot to offer in terms of knowing how to create engagement, how to create immersion. And I got fascinated. If you start reading about game design, it's simply fascinating. At least that's how it was for me. So I guess it was all born from frustration. Also, the fact that I was maybe primed at the university and my master's degree to think that we're living in an experience economy, and that the reality, when I was trying experiences, quotation marks, I didn't feel like it was something. This is a memorable experience that was designed step by step for me. I felt like people are talking about the experience economy, but when you look when you go to the market, the offerings are not there. And to me, I don't consider a thing like the examples that our professors gave us as an experience. So, for example, I imagined something completely different. And the only experience that I found that blew my mind was after I wrote the book, and that was a live action role play called College of Wizardry, where you go to a castle for 4 days and role play being a witch or a wizard, either a student or a professor, for 4 days nonstop. I consider that a very, very well designed experience.
Right. Okay. So I've not come across that a little bit actually. Can you share a little bit more about that, or is it kind of very similar to kind of a college where it's designed with mystery and stuff, or is there more you could share on that?
Well, yes, it's not just the College of Wizardry. There was so Klaus kind of revolutionized this huge creations of live action role playing games. So, and he created more games. So, for example, it was College of Wizardry inspired by Harry Potter. So it's, imagine having the Hogwarts experience, being able to actually experience that firsthand for 4 days in a medieval castle with houses, with housemates, with mischief and magic and so on. And then I tried other games that his company produced, inspired by Downtown Abbey, one called Fairweather Manor. Then another one called Road Trip, where we went from Chicago to LA on a tour with a rock band, and we were all role playing to be either groupies or band members, and we had live concerts where people didn't know that we're role playing.
Oh wow!
So that was pretty wild for an entire week.
Wow.
So those were the things that blew my mind. But again, when I was studying, I didn't hear about these things, so I was frustrated. Like, where is this experience economy actually? To me, going to Disneyland is the thing of the past. I expect, I think Disney is very much of a passive experience, where I feel more of being a consumer of great entertainment, but I don't feel like being a participant. So to me, an experience means I am a participant. I am not a consumer. So that's why I was frustrated. The reason why games are so great is because you get to play. It's not that much fun to watch someone just play a PlayStation right next to you, and you cannot, you don't have a joystick. So that's going to Disneyland. You just strap in the roller coaster and you just consume whatever ride was designed for you. You press one or two buttons. While it's great, I don't think it is memorable enough. Or even going one step forward, transformational. But now there are some things. There are things emerging, and now we can see the experience economy, or even experiences that have a higher purpose of personal transformation emerging in the market. But they're very few and very niche. When you compare it with, let's say, something like retail, which I think is dying as we know it. Yeah. But I will let you poke some more questions, because I can go on and on with my rant.
So I guess I'm just listening to you, and I completely agree. But just one of the things I wanted to pull out is, I guess in a couple of months, and it'll be probably after this podcast, maybe before this podcast is launched, I'm doing a talk around how to design immersive experiences on onboarding. With when a company brings in lots of new recruits, how to create an immersive experience with that. And I guess my design approach, which I will be pushing out there, it's a mix of a few different things kind of merged into one. So I take a lot from human-centered design and design thinking. I use the 5E kind of experience design in the middle, and talking about kind of entry, excite, that stuff. And then the third part is kind of talking about this consumer grade experience as well. So if we're going to use technology and we're going to use this kind of tech and this equipment, actually, how can the equipment what we use in corporates needs to match the experience what our users use outside of work. But I guess when it comes to you designing experiences, what's is there anything unique? How what is your design approach? I guess.
I would call it live design. Good example. Yesterday, I had a class with the students at the university, and I had option A. Usually, my classes are very interactive, so I had option A, plan for what will I do for opening, how will I take them, how will I use an intensity chart of starting strong and then going higher, so like a boom, 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 and wow at the end. What are my touch points? What is the key takeaway, and so on. That would have taken me a lot of time and energy, versus improvise and show up and be able to come up with a design on the spot based on the reality of the classroom. because I've did both. I've planned things and I've did things improvisationally. So I think my design approach is something that I call live design. Just be very knowledgeable in some techniques, so to say, of how do you create a magic circle. Are you familiar with the magic circle?
No. Please tell me more.
Well, it comes from the theory of play. So a magic circle is a sacred space of play. So as simple as a magic circle is, imagine it could be a football field. That's a magic circle. If people are playing football, that's the magic circle. That means that what's happening on the football field is a complete different reality because the rules are different, people interact in a different way. It's an alternate reality that is triggered by play and by the set and the setting. Another example of a magic circle could be if someone invites you to a space, and that space is being set up in a specific way. Even a classroom could be a magic circle. Just because, when you as a student go in a classroom, you are behaving in a specific way that classroom is being designed for. Most probably you sit down and listen. So these are all spaces that have certain rules and norms and make people behave in a specific way. So what I did is I went to the classroom. I was there 5 minutes earlier, so the students saw me. There was no surprise, right? I was a guest lecturer. And then the class started. I got introduced. And then I told the students, please go out of the classroom. It might take 5 minutes or so. I will give you a signal when you can come back in because I have to prepare the classroom.
Okay.
So they went out. And just by me telling them I have to prepare the classroom, that kind of puts them in a state of getting ready for something that is not a day-to-day ordinary experience.
Yep.
So you've prepared them for, immersion, if you want. You prepared them to be present. You prepared them for something else. And all I did in the classroom was to use a sponge to clear the board, the blackboard, and write on it 2021, and then put some background music. And I thought, all right, you can come back in now. So I invited them in the space that I have prepared for them. So this is very simple. I was not thinking about it, but while I was there, I was like, right, I arrived early, they already saw me, I need to do something to get them ready. So let's just, when you have some notions of how you can improvise, then you can easily do it. So that you can do that by practice and reading a lot, I guess. So then they came back in, and then depending on, on their mood, for example, I saw halfway through, I saw that some of them were a bit tired. So I just initiated a massage session in the middle of the class. So what I did is to respond live to their experience versus having a plan and executing it no matter the feedback. So that's kind of my approach nowadays. It's called rapid prototyping.
Yeah, I like that. And it's interesting you mentioned kind of classroom. So, one of the things me and numerous other people are trying to do in corporate environments is actually just remove classroom. It didn't work when people was in school. It doesn't work now. So what we do is we go, okay, now you're grown ups. We're going to put you in the the equivalent of a classroom in a corporate environment. Let's call it a meeting room. So what there's a group of people, and there's probably a lot over here in the UK. They're trying to go away. There's still people who want classroom, but there's probably a handful of people who are going away from classroom and saying actually create experiences rather than the classroom. And this sometimes is just literally a complete change in the environment, And I guess for me, this thing of what you said there about kind of live, it works really well. How do you find, if say for instance you're let's use the word facilitation just because it's easier, but how do you find the people around you? Are they all working to that kind of same design? Just kind of going with the flow, kind of not ad hoc, but kind of, working with the environment in an organically way? Or so how do you find kind of working with other people around you with that?
It depends. So, for example, if there are people that come from the live action role play domain, and this is more like the Nordic live action role play, that's very easy because that's what you do when you're doing live action role play. It's live action role play. So that's like the ultimate level of improvisation. So when collaborating with people from that space, it's very easy because they know how to do that. When collaborating with someone that is, let's say, a service designer, they might have an anxiety attack because, but also the design thinking method, you just come with a huge stack of Post-its and you bring in lots of people in one room. And maybe at the end of the day, all you did was not too much.
Yeah.
So usually people that come from those fields have a shock. At the College of Extraordinary Experiences, we're always on time because there is no schedule, right?
Okay.
So when people, let's say people that design events, when they see that we have no schedule, it creates some sort of cognitive dissonance. They're like, what do you mean there is no schedule? And to me, just, and I heard you giggling because you can, everyone can easily imagine how people will freak out.
Yeah.
That there is no schedule to an event. But I think coming back to questioning is, why do people freak out if there is no schedule? I think that's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's that kind of behaviour what's been embedded into him over time, over corporate environment, and schools. You got to show up late for class. You can't show up late for class, and we go into work, and you've got to be in by 9 o'clock, and it becomes this deeper behaviour what's kind of been drummed into us. I can just picture lots of people having meltdowns when you're saying there's no schedule. So that's the kind of thing what really cheered me up. So I guess okay. So I mean, there's a couple of random questions here for you, Paul, and yeah, some of them you can go as deep or as light touch with these as you want. But if you had to give a gift of a book to 5 people, what book would that be?
Oh, I think it depends on who those 5 people are.
Okay, maybe.
Or what do they want to learn?
Maybe rephrase that then. What's the one book? What's complete? And we can't use experience economy because we've already used Joe Pine's book. What's the one other book? What's changed the way? Yeah. What's the one book? What's had the biggest impact on you?
There are so many books. I think one book that marked me, and not as necessarily as an experienced designer, but more as how I view and look at my career, was The Invention of Nature by Alexander von Humboldt.
Okay.
It's the life of Alexander von Humboldt, who was a polymath and a naturalist and an explorer and many things. And just reading his biography just blows your mind. He's the person that inspired Charles Darwin. Um, he had a copy of his book on Beagle in the expedition, and he inspired Goethe to write. And he's kind of one of the first humans to come up with the idea that everything is interconnected, by doing crazy explorations all over the globe a long time ago.
Okay. So, there's a lot of let's say there's a lot. There's a few people and companies what I like to keep an eye on personally, just for my own interest, my own personal development, and actually just because it ticks a lot of the boxes what I'm really into. Paul, you being one, John's being one, Claude's being one, college of extraordinary experiences, and we've got things like Meow Wolf, Museum of Ice Cream, all slightly different, Punch Drunk. But what do you think? What do you think the future is of immersive experience?
I think right now people are experimenting a lot with the medium. So I think it's very niche right now. Very, very niche. Like you said, there are very few people working in this field, exploring it. And from a business perspective, there is a huge interest. So I think that the near future would be for us as practitioners to kind of bridge the gap between businesses understanding what we're doing and understanding the value of experience design. But if you'd ask me what I think the future of immersive is to guide personal transformations. I'm completely in tune with Joe Pine's thinking, Pine and Gilmore. And I think the bigger question is, you're guiding transformations, but what kind of transformations should we create in this world? How should we use this immersive experience realm to help? I think I've been in projects that where people from corporations were crying when they were listening to research, in-depth, active listening research results, hearing the results being along the lines, what the customers, they feel like customers of shopping centers in this case, they feel like they're just numbers in a big machine. They feel like they're trapped in a hamster wheel and they don't know how to get out, but they're looking for help. I think we're living in a very sad, we have created a very sad world, to be honest. And I think as practitioners, our responsibility is to somehow create or touch people in such a way that they start getting or taking action in their own life to improve it psychologically, socially, and also ecologically. Just being able to take control of that, and knowing or learning how to escape the hamster wheel, not being a number anymore, contributing to the well-being of the planet, fixing everything, all the chaos that we have created, trying to step out of the profit-making trap, trying to stop trying to just sell things and at scale. We're always trying to scaling. The big question is, how do you scale experiences?
Yeah, that is a big question.
Why do we have to scale experiences? Why can't we teach everyone to create experiences for themselves, for their friends, for their grandparents, for their mothers, for their sons, for animals. That's how you scale it, by teaching everyone in the world that they are the experience designers of their life. So I think, to me, it's like, if that's where I see, at least, the immersive scene going, of responsible creators.
But I guess just to kind of build on that, I mean, fundamentally, we've already figured out a way to scale. We do it every day with our own personal experiences. Like, my take on things is, we are all experienced designers already. It's kind of a case of we've just not switched on to what we're doing, and sometimes it is about that kind of thing of, you design your own experiences on a day-to-day anyway. And one of the biggest questions what you hear in corporate environments is, how can you scale this experience? Because, let's have a look at, say, a business. A business struggles with how, okay, we've got a leadership program and there's 25 people on there. How are you going to scale that to target 200 people, 300, 400 people, 500 people across the globe with a budget? And I guess my experience design, I've always done it on budget. I've never, I've always had to figure it out myself. I've never had budget to play with. So my experiences, what I've designed, have always been me designing it and using my imagination and coming up with something with nothing, having nothing to go with, and creating something quite unique. And I guess that's kind of why we won awards and stuff, because, I've always worked for a lot of the time I've worked for low budget providers. So, kind of these kind of providers of, facilities, tech, broadband or whatever, but aimed towards the people who pay less. So, I've never worked for, say, a Coca-Cola or someone who has big bags of money and can scale that. But I guess if you was to kind of, if someone was to come to your business now and say, okay, we want you to create an experience, but it needs to be scaled across, I don't know, a demographic. Let's just say it's got to be scaled. It's got to be done across the globe, and there's only a budget of X amount of money. How would you approach that challenge?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a sculptor called Brâncuș. He has beautiful, simple work. He has a quote saying that simplicity is complexity resolved. So I would use that hat on. And in order for an experience to be able to scale, it needs to be extremely simple, very simple. An easy way that I'm thinking could be done right now is to create an audio-enabled experience with instructions that can be executed anywhere, and you don't need any props for it other than your headphones. And it's not dependent on the environment that you find yourself in, or the time of the day, or what you're wearing. A great example of that is a project initiated by a colleague of mine, a good friend, David Pearl, called Street Wisdom. Your listeners can just find it and download it. It's free, or they can just donate if they want to. It's a nonprofit, and they can try it. It's a 1.5 hour audio-enabled experience.
Okay. It's really interesting you mentioned this. Actually, I met up with a friend who works who creates podcasts, and I was talking to her. I was saying I think the next big thing for podcasts is kind of breaking that fourth wall, if you like, and actually making your podcast be more immersive in general. A lot of podcasts tends to be kind of, like you say, earphones in and that's it. And I was actually challenging with an idea. I said, wouldn't it be great if you could create a podcast which is a kind of an ongoing story each week, and within that story there's things where people have to unplug the podcast, and they have to go a bit like how like with Pokemon Go, when you have to go and collect Pokemon. I was like, you could have it so it's story based, where weekly you get this story, but people have to go out and immerse themselves in the real world. And there's kind of a bit like I guess in my head, when I was kind of just coming up with random stuff, I kind of mixed in kind of wacky races, bit of Pokemon Go, bit of podcasts, and I kind of come up with this, one of my many random ideas. But it's interesting to see that you mentioned podcasts. Definitely.
Yeah, other great examples are apps such as Headspace for meditation, or Waking Up with Sam Harris is also for meditation, that has lessons included. So I'd call, for example, the Sam Harris Experience app. I think it's not only an audio-enabled experience, but it's a transformational experience that is just enabled by an app. Or just meditate, listen to lessons, and do it on a regular basis. That is, uses learning, adapts it, starts easy, has an onboarding and offboarding, etc. So I think that's the easiest way to scale things, but trying to reduce as much complexity as possible.
Yeah. Hey, hello?
Yes.
Sorry, I thought you disappeared. Sorry, Paul. I guess I'm just thinking. I mean, Sam Harris's his podcast is great as well. Actually, it got me thinking. I'm not sure how much you watch television, but you remember the old TV show, The Twilight Zone?
Nope.
Okay, well, the Twilight Zone was it was a very, very old program, and the things like Black Mirrors, X-Files, all these TV shows kind of took a lot from here. Anyway, it's kind of been re-energized, and they've made it modern now. And one of the things was, actually just thinking about it, was they used a podcast, and everything what happened in a podcast predicted the future on this flight, what he was on. And I just thought that's a great example of, assuming sky's the limit and you've got lots and lots of kind of budget and stuff. But I can brainstorm ideas like this all day. But went off on a tangent there, Paul. Sorry.
No worries. I like being creative and brainstorming stuff.
So I guess going back to you then. So some of these questions are deep, so I do apologise in advance. But here's one question for you: do you like yourself?
That's just dropped out of nowhere.
Yep.
I think generally I do like myself, but first of all, I don't think we should first, before asking this question, maybe even, is there a self?
Oh, okay.
Do you believe that there is a self? I think, also by coming from just experiencing a lot of live action role play, when you're someone else for 4 days, 5 days, 1 week, it's just you're never the same person. You're every day someone else. So I think I have a good energy, and I'm working a lot on my energy with Qigong, meditation. And when you meditate, you're aiming to just disconnect. So there is no judgment. There is no I like myself or I don't like myself. There is ego kind of tends to go away because you're just stepping out of that game. So I think I'm not usually worried with this that much, because I think we're constantly changing mood and who we are as persons, or how we feel. But I don't have any problem with it, with saying I hate myself, or I don't want to live anymore, or something like that.
Okay. So yeah, that was out of the blue. So I guess going kind of this idea of kind of learning. So, based on a lot of people, the 5 or 6 people who I know do this really well. This thing of experiences, I use this analogy of an experience opens a door to allow change in. But I guess, we know our experience changes us, and then when it comes to kind of we recall on our experiences and emotions and the things that made us feel. But in corporate environments, they just seem to really be struggling with this at the moment. And like, so when I look at kind of some of the stuff I've done, kind of turn my whole onboarding experience into an extreme breakout, escape room, kind of, one of the things which we did a while back was kind of this thing of security. A big corporate environment where I worked for had this thing about data protection, and people wasn't doing the experience, wasn't passing the security check, and I was like, because they don't care, it's not impacting them, so let's make them care. So I created this experience where we did social engineering on each other, and then kind of the idea was basically you don't care about security, so how can we make you care? And the idea basically was actually we built up this whole persona, this whole profile of a person in the room, using all the social media, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, all this stuff, all the information you could do. And actually what you get to see is when they present it back, it starts becoming quite scary when people can say, you take your kid to this school, your dad's called this, your brother's called this, you've got a dog, start building this profile up. And then only then, when they get a little bit freaked out by the fact of there was no security protecting their information, can we deploy the fix on why security is important. But have you worked with any big corporate environments who have have you worked with anyone who has done this immersive experience and kind of gone at it with a corporate background?
Can you repeat the last part of the question?
Yeah, sorry. So have you worked with any corporate big companies who have, where you've brought, experience designing immersive experiences in? Have you worked on any what you can share?
Sure. We've collaborated with IKEA centers. So not the IKEA furniture stores, but centers, which is, they have shopping centers, over 74 in China, Russia, and Europe. And we have used what I shared with your listeners earlier, the live improvisational approach to experience design. And I also shared before the results of research and people actually shedding tears when listening to, how are people lives looking, the customers, how do their real life looking? You asked me what I like myself. Clearly, those people hated their life, or they were not. I would say, I think hate is too big of a word, but I think they were in some sort of depression or not seeing a way out. At least this is how the results came back. So we were shocked to see that. I mean, we kind of know that in Western culture, we're all traversing this weird weird landscape where everyone is softly depressed and stressed out, burnt out, panic attacks, anxiety attacks. There is much of that going on. So we had that research that validated that people are actually experiencing this soft depression. So then we were challenged to figure out how can we move from a shopping center to an experience center, where if retail is going to die in the next years, that means that space that still exists, which is a shopping center, if we take out brands, what do we put in instead? And we took a space in the shopping center, and we created mini mall in that space by using cardboard boxes to map out the corridors and the different spaces. And then we worked with the local community of students and artists, and we gave each team, there were 6 teams, a space. And they had to design an experience that helped facilitate human interaction in each space. And then in the shopping center, we masked this space with bookcases. And if you wanted to go in, you had to pass through this magical closet, and you go through a labyrinth, and then you open this extraordinary center, we called it. And you can go and try out the different experiences. So while people were coming in, based on how they were reacting and what they were doing, we were changing the space constantly. The layout was changing constantly. Each experience of each group was changing constantly to iterate. So this is iteration on steroids, I would call it, right? This is live design. And we did this for 5 days, for 4 hours each day. And every night we destroyed the whole space. And then we rebuilt it again from scratch the next day based on the learnings that we have from customers that were entering the space. So we used 1,200 people that entered our space. We created learning based on that. And then we used the same space to train the global management team of IKEA centers to teach them how to design experiences by giving them the chance to do rapid prototyping with customers approaching. And they had to design the spaces now and learn firsthand. And then in the evening, we transformed that space into a restaurant. So imagine, besides the cardboard boxes, there were so many other interesting things. There was like artworks, there were lots of fluffy animals, there were balls, there were musical instruments, people playing theater, interacting with people, all sorts of stuff. So at the end of this project, we managed to create a community, of the people that participated in this project, and they wanted to stay longer and continue the project. But it was just a test that proved actually that people are willing to pay an entrance fee to have time well spent or time well invested. We had people crying. Just to give you an example, so for your listeners to make an idea, we had this team that they were experimenting quite a lot. So they moved from theater to making music. So they're always changing their experience based on the feedback that the customers gave, but we're also facilitating them and giving feedback to them as well. And they had this experience where someone had a piano that was connected to some headphones. So this father and daughter came and asked, okay, what is going on? It's like, okay, he invited the father to go in this dark room, which was a circle of boxes and was dark, and he had to put the headphones on. And the daughter stayed with the person that was playing the piano. And that person asked, okay, tell me something about your father. So she started sharing very personal and cute stuff about her father, why he loves him, why he likes him a lot. And he improvisationally created a song based on what the daughter was saying, while the father was listening at the headphones to the song and crying. So this is an example that just came out of that, but nothing was planned. Everything was live tested and continuously developed in what we call this, experience design accelerator. To learn how do we move, from this transactional, I want to buy this, to this, okay, how do I spend quality time with my wife, my children, my girlfriend, my friends? To, remove that sense of not belonging, to remove the loneliness, the soft depression, to actually getting a sense of achievement and doing something. So this is an example.
Wow, that sounds amazing, to be honest, Paul. That sounds awesome. I mean, this is one of the things what I could probably dig into more, but I just want to be mindful of your time as well, I guess.
Mm-hmm. There is also a documentary that I think I can share with you. I need to check whether we're allowed to do it.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. But yeah, if you could share that'd be fantastic. I guess let's do some quick fire round questions. So if I was to say to you, right, Paul, you've got 3 billboards outside the stadium, and I don't know, maybe 2 million people are going to see this billboard, and you can put any message or any image or anything you want on there to change or to make people look at what you're going to say. What would your message or image be?
Let me think about it. I mean, there's so many things we can put on there. The thing is that people don't read billboards nowadays, so it definitely has to be a billboard that people can, that will attract people to interact with it. So most probably it could be a billboard that has a door on it. And if you open this door, then you will step in a different world that can, that is an experience, let's say, which will, by spending time in this, it's a Narnia-like transition, from your walking towards the stadium, seeing this door, opening it, and then stepping into a complete different reality. I would create there, a billboard is not enough, so therefore we need an experience. So inside that, we'll create, or we'll let them experience a moment of presence.
Okay.
I don't know how to, but if you give me the budget, then we can design inside there something that will give the people an experience that has the same effect as the term called the overview effect. It's basically what astronauts experience when they see the Earth from space.
Yeah.
And they change their perception. They understand how little we all are on this, in this universe. So it kind of diminishes and kills the ego. Again, right? Do you like yourself? That's just the ego. So something that kills and diminishes your ego and makes you aware of how little and insignificant you are, but then also empowers you to be much more mindful to your peers and to the planet.
Yeah. I think this would be a great segue to talk about, have you heard about ayahuasca and stuff like that and the experience, but it's probably not that type of podcast, unfortunately. Okay, so I guess if you was a king, and what would your throne look like?
I don't think I would have a throne. I would just have something more like a yoga barn type of setup.
Okay, and if you was to give a gift to a child, what would you give and why?
A gift to a child. A skateboard.
Okay.
I used to be a skateboarder. I'm still skating from time to time, and snowboarding. Just because I think it represents infinite possibility if you get hooked on it.
Yeah, it does.
You get to play with gravity, so that's pretty fun.
Okay, well, if you was to sum up to a 3-year-old what it is you do, how would you sum that up?
I tell stories.
Okay, that's a great one-liner. It's a great one. Okay, so we've got kind of, I've mentioned, there's people out here who are doing cool stuff, and we've already mentioned Joe Pine and stuff and the experience economy. But who's the top 3 or 4 people you think people should be following and not researching, but following and paying attention to?
The top 3 people.
Yeah.
Let me think. That's tough. I think it might be interesting to follow Robert Wright.
Okay.
I did a course with him on Coursera on evolutionary psychology and Buddhism. So he's really interesting, and he's just launching a course now called Beyond Tribalism: How Mindfulness Can Save the World. To me, it's like the more and more I do experience design, the more and research. I'm writing a second book on how to design transformational experiences. The more I end up on mindfulness, Buddhism, philosophy, and so on. So I think that's why I'm recommending him, because he's a scientist and he's looking at Buddhism and mindfulness from the lens of science, but he also has experience, with this. So that's really interesting to dive and look into. I'm just making my own subjective references here. Chris Hadfield, he's an astronaut.
Okay.
He has a very interesting course on Masterclass about space exploration. So again, it's not necessarily that you'll learn, experience, design tricks or tricks and tips from Robert Wright or from Chris, but it will be more of a mindset thing. And the third person, who should the third lucky person be? I think John Law. He's the co-founder of Burning Man, of the Cacophony Society in San Francisco, and of the Suicide Club. He's going to have an exhibit about his life in San Francisco soon. And he's a fascinating person to get in touch with, and I think you can also find some of his books, just to see how he was doing. He was playing with stories and experiences way, 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 way back, and he's such a beautiful, and modest person.
Okay, I will definitely put them notes and kind of in the show notes and kind of where to find them. So I want to kind of get involved in kind of this College of Extraordinary Experiences. So be mindful. I know you can't give too much away because it is this amazing experience, and please say pass at any point if there's a risk of giving too much away. But how did it come about? So I know you mentioned how you met Claus and stuff, but how kind of why you mentioned it kind of from frustration and whatnot, and maybe how has it come about, and what's been the biggest hurdles to you setting something up like this?
So going back to the story, so to circle back to the beginning, wrote the book, had huge expectations from the experience economy, got invited to talk at many conferences. The first frustration that I have with this world is, why do all hotels, universities, classrooms, houses look more or less the same? There's a funny story about when do you think wheels were added to luggage?
I know it's, from what I can, in grasping at time, I know it in relevance. It's pretty. It was pretty. It was quite soon here. From my timeline, I know it is quite a modern update, because if you look at some of the old pictures, it was always people carting things around. But I mean, go for it. Explain.
More or less in the 70s. Isn't that strange?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty new, right? It's still new in the kind of test of time, I guess.
It's very very new, right? I mean, do you if you check your grandparents' attic, do you think you will not find luggage with wheels? That's for sure. That's how new it is. Or even your parents, depending on age. But I was living in this, as a student and as an author, and researching the latest things. I was living in this in my mind, and I had so huge expectations of the world. And then I started traveling so much, and got invited to this huge budget, conferences and events, and I was like, these people are blowing up 25,000, 35,000, 50,000 euros on a screen, and people are just staying on their smartphone and not even listening to the keynote. Something is super wrong here. um, so it I was frustrated because I couldn't find these experiences, and then finally found one, which was the College of Wizardry that Klaus's company was doing at the time. And I started collaborating with Klaus, and we did a big production. Yep. And then I'm trying to remember where we did that, before or after. Where college was our first project. It could be that college. No, college was our second project. After we did a live action role playing experience together. And I said, all right, look, we have College of Wizardry. It's live action role play. It's immersive. It's great, but it's this fantasy thing. So it would be great if we, going to a LARP is great to just learn how to design experiences, even if it's fantasy. But people from businesses or from corporations or from academia will not go to a fantasy LARP to learn about experience design. So we kind of used inspiration from the live action role play world and from the castle and from the props that were already there, and combine it with the theory from gamification in tourism and experience design, and created some sort of live action role play that is not about being a witch or a wizard, is not about being a noble or a servant, it's not about being a vampire, but it's about being a student of experience design. But equally as magic, equally as in-depth, equally as mind-blowing, because we're using lots of, let's say, we're using a lot from the spheres of games and live-action role-play and storytelling. And you're not going there to listen to people. You're going there to do. You're going there to co-design. There is no one going to tell you, all right, here's how we do experience design. I'm very, very careful with models, even though I have a model in my book. After practicing for quite a while and producing, I realized that models of experience design, of design thinking, they need to be used with caution.
Yep.
Because there is no model, then most probably all of your podcast listeners would like to get the elixir of experience design. Here's the 5-step model. I think there is no 5-step model. It's just a million hats. So what we have at the college, and I'm really happy that we created it in this way, is realizing, from the start that there is no recipe for experience design, because experiences are so complex and they're multidisciplinary. You have someone that knows how to play with the sense of smell, but even that person that knows how to play with the sense of smell, they know a niche part of it that they're really good at. But then you have the other senses, which are many, not just the 5. And then beyond that, you have lots with psychology, then you'll have lots with spatial design, then you have lots with I don't know, technology, let's say, or there's so many elements involved. And from the start, we realized that in order to be able to make this valuable enough is that we need to make sure year after year that we have a very diverse student selection, because it is key to open your mind to as many ideas as possible, to as many points of view as possible, in order to be able to be a good experience designer. And that's the reason why all of the free people that I recommended to follow have nothing to do directly with experience design, but they're people from different practices and viewpoints that can challenge you as an experience designer, can enrich you as a concept maker or creator. And there is no recipe for experience design, but being open and finding yourself at the center of multiple disciplines and working with people from different fields and understanding and immersing yourself in as many different points of view as possible. So that's embedded in our design.
So it's really interesting, I guess. It is about that. It's about kind of taking something from somewhere and being able to remold that and turn it into something else, and make something in the shape of how you see things, not as how it potentially might have been, at the start. But when you look at kind of, I went on an experience probably around about 2 weeks ago. It was one of these kind of zombie apocalypse experiences where I was kind of locked in somewhere for 4 or 5 hours. Which was great experience, and great for fitness, because literally I've never run around so much in my whole life. But if you look at, say, cinemas right now, it's interesting to see what they're doing with kind of 4D. So they're using kind of sense of smell, and the chairs move, and fireworks are happening when there's gunshots, and in war zones there's flashes and bangs, and it's kind of immersing the film a little bit more than what it originally was. But I guess where do you see the future of the college going? I guess maybe it isn't. Maybe there's no scale, like we said. Maybe it's just a case of where it is right now is exactly where it needs to be, and where it belongs. Is that your vision of it, or?
It's the one major focus that we have at the college is on community. So the way we see that we have impact on the world is with the community that we're building, because they come to the college, or students come to the college, they bond with each other, and they create bridges and connections between, cultures, between disciplines, and they start collaborating and building projects. And in those projects, there are other people from other networks coming in. So I see the college in the future as, the builder of this experience design global community, and becoming sort of a gathering as much know-how, intel, and resources to be able to share with the world, and to foster and continue growing this community, this beautiful community of people from different disciplines. We're looking not to expand, so there will be just one college. There will be no other college than this one, once a year, with this limited number of people. We will have those sub projects that are not the College of Extraordinary Experiences, but they could be institutes that can represent a backbone of a city, to help the city transition from a service-based economy to a meaningful experience economy.
Okay. Okay, I'm just listening to it. There's a book which just come to mind while I was just listening to you there, Paul. It's a book called A Patterned Language. Have you heard of that?
No.
Oh, so it's a great. I think you'll really enjoy it. Predominantly it's about kind of architecture, but it's also about the towns and kind of what shapes towns and communities and how a low ceiling can make you feel completely different to say a high ceiling can in a building. And I think you might like that. Sorry, it just went off on a tangent there, but I think you might enjoy that.
Wrote it down. Thank you.
So, just coming up to the end now.
Just to add another book to give more value to your listener, just because the book popped to my mind. It's called The Art of Gathering by Priya Parker.
Okay.
And then there's another book that again popped to my mind right now. It's called The Power of Moments: Why Certain Experiences Have Extraordinary Impact by Chip Health and Dan Health.
Such a good book. Such a good book.
That's another.
Awesome. Well, I'll leave them in the notes. Okay, so I don't want to get too much into the college because I don't want to ruin it, and I want people to experience it like how it should be experienced. But I guess just kind of going back to what 5 tips would you give to somebody who wants to get into experience design?
Hmm. 5 tips. Let me think. Number 1. Make sure that people opt in your experience. And you're not forcing people in an experience. Make sure that people can opt out of an experience. It's the same rules as play. You cannot, and that's the problem with corporations. When, imagine you're getting hired and you have to create an experience for a corporate client. Now, the employees show up at your experience. Some of them don't want to be there. And that's the problem why the experience will fail, because they are not opting in. They're forced to opt in just because they're part of a corporation that they kind of have to do this team building exercise. They kind of have to do this, whatever. So make sure that if you're in such a case as an experienced designer, your experience looks amazing, that people would want to opt in no matter what. Right?
Okay.
That's why we have the College of Extraordinary Experiences. It's in a castle. It looks amazing. People really want to go there. They want to be there. They will not feel, bad if their employer says you have to go. So be very mindful of safety of participants. So opt in, opt out, safety. These 2 tips. Okay. A third tip would be simplicity is complexity resolved. You don't need 1 million props. You don't need an elaborate plan. You don't need some complicated matrix. You don't need to use a lot of design thinking to make an experience immersive, worthwhile, memorable, and potentially transformational. Think of the example that I gave with just, dear students, please leave the room. I have to prepare it. As simple as that. Keep it extremely simple and eliminate everything that is just a nice add-on. That's the third. The fourth, start meditating. Experience with meditation. Everything what you're designing appears and is played in the space of consciousness. It could be the collective consciousness. You have to be very much aware that people can, if you have a group of people, they will kind of, like a choir singing together. They would tune and calibrate to the same level. And if you dive into meditation, and we just mentioned two great apps here, Waking Up or Headspace, you can just try this audio enabled experiences. You will be a much better experience designers if you understand your own mind and how consciousness works. And the fifth one is read as many books as possible, do as many courses as possible on fascinating subjects that are not about experience design.
Perfect.
No, that's how you can find your originality and creativity. It's not by following a 5-step experience design model, but by reading about astronauts or reading about anthropologists going to some tribe and learning from tribal culture. That's a great source of inspiration. The tribal cultures, people that were in tribes, were kind of the first experience designers.
Okay, perfect. Another good book. I feel like this is turning into a book podcast. Homecoming. Have you heard of that book?
No.
Really great book. So it's a guy who went to the war and kind of came back after the war, and it's kind of about the impact what wars have on society and how actually it brings people together in community. Yeah, you might like that, you might not. Okay, great tips. So at the beginning, kind of coming back full circle now, at the beginning I asked you to pick 6 numbers. Them 6 numbers are tallied to some random items on my list. And the story is this, Paul. Basically, you're on an island and you found these 6 items. And you've got a bottle cap, which was number 3, an iPad charger, which was number 99, a balloon, which was 100, a spoon, which was 2, and a candle, which was 1, and a key ring. How do you use these items on a desert island? What do you do with them?
What is the purpose of me being on that desert island? For I need some context.
Okay. The context can be whatever you want it to be. It can be for you to survive. It can be for you to be creative and just, ride out your days until something comes along. You could use them as survival to kind of, keep yourself on there. Maybe it's hunting fish, making traps. I don't know. It can be whatever you want it to be, Paul.
So I think if I was on an abandoned island that was not where humans didn't have a role to play in modifying the environment and ruining the ecosystem, then I think I wouldn't need any of these items. So I'll just maybe bury them. Because in an ecosystem that hasn't been spoiled, everything that you need should be there. If it's a working ecosystem, if it's a nice island, not that you said it's a desert island, right?
Yep.
Well, if it's a desert island, I'm kind of dead with these items, anyways.
Okay, better you. It's gonna make for a great adventure for somebody else who comes along, eh?
To me, I would really think that all of these items will just ruin my feng shui and the landscape. So I just try to get rid of them and just meditate until I die, because there is no other way out.
Okay, perfect. Well, I guess 2 more questions and we are done. So question 1. Right at the beginning of the podcast, I asked you what you wanted to be when you grow older. And as you know, Paul, we're constantly growing as people, as humans. So if I was to ask you that question now, Paul, what is it you want to be when you grow up? What would your answer be right now?
I think I'm already moving towards what I wanted to be when I was, what I said that I want to be when I grow up, when I was a kid. I'm moving a lot towards nature, very much so. So I think what I want to be is I want to be one with nature. I want to experience nature much more than I do now, and just enjoy it.
Okay, nice. Okay, so
it's not tied with any career ego-driven goal. It's just enjoying, the beauty of our planet. What's at least, and maybe trying to put a shoulder to have some positive impact on trying to recover or rebuild or repair.
Okay, beautiful. Beautiful. So, Paul, where can people go to find out a little bit more about you, a little bit more about the College of Extraordinary Experiences and whatnot? Where can we go?
So, you can find about the gamification in tourism book by just Googling gamification in tourism. You'll easily find it. You can find out more about the college by visiting extraordinary.college. And you can find me on Instagram, just Powell.Bulencea. So it's my first and dot last name.
Awesome. Paul, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Danny. It was great.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you to I want to give my special thanks to everyone who managed to reach the end of the podcast. I hope you had a great ride.
Beautiful. Cheers, Paul. Thanks again.
Cheers. Thanks.
Bye-bye.